Hey, good morning, Trondheim friends, and welcome to this week's edition of Patio Ponderings. I'm Pastor Sue, and I'm so glad you decided to join me. So over the last couple of weeks, we've gotten started on a sermon series on villains of the Bible. And it's been pretty interesting thinking about the bad guys and who they are and what their motivation is, and probably more importantly, how do we as followers of Jesus respond to and resist the evil in the world? So this past week, we talked about the Pharaoh, and this is part of the Exodus story in which the Israelites were held as slaves for hundreds of years under Egyptian rule, and God hears their cries and calls Moses to lead them to freedom. Now, I think we need to understand a few things about the Pharaoh when we've been thinking about this. So the pharaohs are rulers of Egypt, and they have immense power. And it's not just human power, but they were considered to be somewhat divine. They were considered to be gods on earth. And so it's not only power of the human realm, but they were viewed as having power in the cosmic realm as well. So resistance, fighting against the evil that a pharaoh might do, such as when they enslave people and treat them cruelly and sadistically, is really challenging, especially for us thinking about ourselves individually. And yet, that is what Moses is called to do. God calls Moses to stand against the power of a pharaoh and demand that he let God's people go. So it's pretty remarkable. But you know, we have that same call today. We still have pharaohs in our nation and in our world today, people in power that wield that power with cruelty and inhumanity. And as followers of Jesus, we are called to stand against that, to resist. And I think we wonder how we do that. How can one person or even a group of people resist that kind of immense power? Well, I'd like to take a look at a story within the story to help us think this through. So within the Exodus story, very early on in the first chapter, when the Pharaoh is really escalating in his viciousness against the Israelites, we meet two Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. And the Pharaoh calls them into his court, and he says, when you deliver Hebrew babies, if they're male, I want you to kill them. You can let the baby girls live, but the male babies, I want you to get rid of. What a horrible directive, to say the least. Well, these two midwives defied the Pharaoh, and they let the baby boys live. And so they were called back in to answer for this. And I just want to read just the quick verse here of what happens in this story when they're called back into the Pharaoh to answer for themselves. So the king of Egypt called the two midwives and said to them, why are you doing this? Why are you letting the baby boys live? And the two midwives said to Pharaoh, because Hebrew women aren't like Egyptian women. They're much stronger, and they give birth before any midwives can get to them. What a shrewd, clever, and courageous response to the Pharaoh. And even a veiled insult to boot that these women did. It's incredible. But I think it points to something for all of us. These two women who had little to no power or agency, and certainly would not seem to be people that could stand or resist the immense power of the Pharaoh, they use their skills, their resources, their knowledge, in whatever sphere of influence that they have, to act in ways that defy the evil. They aren't changing whole systems. They aren't militarily bringing down the Pharaoh or defeating his armies. But in their world, in the world of midwifery, they are doing what they can. And I think that's a really important lesson for us. We all have in our own worlds some kind of influence, some kind of resource, some kind of intelligence, skills to resist evil. So I think if we start there and look at what those things are in our own little arenas of life, we might indeed find some ways that we can stand against evil, that we can resist, that we can call it out, even against some really immense power. It's intriguing, isn't it? It's a story. It's a story within a story that I just love. I find it encouraging and just so brave. So what do you think? How do you think of resisting evil in your own little world? What skills do you have? What resources do you have in whatever capacity you live your life to resist evil? As always, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Heat is on its way, so stay cool, stay comfortable, stay safe, and I hope to see you all on Sunday. Bye.